Hello everyone, welcome to another video on the Many Data Perspective channel. In our today's video, we'll be looking at loops in Python. We'll be looking at the for loops, while loops, nested loops, when and how to make use of loops when coding in Python. So please kindly like, subscribe to my YouTube channel, like and share this video if you find it very educative. Okay, so without wasting time, let's dive right in.
Loops allows us to execute a block of code multiple times. Some of the benefits include reducing repetitive coding. It enhances efficiency and readability of your code. It is essential for tasks like data processing, iterating through lists, and automation. We have different types of loops. We have the for loop, the while loop, and we'll be looking at each of these two types of loops, okay? The first one we're looking at is the for loop. What are the use case for using a for loop? A for loop can be used for iterating over a sequence like list, tuple, dictionary, string. The syntax for using the for loop is this. I'll be writing the code for I in your sequence. Then your code you want to execute, your code to execute. Okay, so this is syntax for writing a for loop. I would said the sequence could either be a list, a string, a dictionary, a tuple, etc. Okay, so for example, let's say we have a list and let's call this fruit. So our fruit contains a list of various fruits. We have banana, apple, mangoes, and one more. Let's call this tangerine. Okay, so we have a list containing various types of fruits. I want to loop through this list. So the easiest way we can do this is to say for I in our fruits, what's the code we want to execute? We want to print out each fruit, right? Let's print out I. Okay, let me make this easy for her. So let me go ahead and run this code, and you can see we have banana, apple, mangoes, and tangerine. Okay, so for us to print out a much more interesting sentence, I can say I want to print out I love mangoes, I love tangerine. How do we go about that? We can go and say print I love. Okay, and we can do this and say we want to print I. So let's give I some space. Okay, and let's go ahead and run this. I love banana. Okay, so this is an easy way for doing this syntax which I just typed in here. In most cases you would see it as this. Okay, so let me just go ahead and show you. In most cases you see this our print statement as this instead. I love, open curly braces and placing I and this. Okay, close. So if we run this, we're going to get same solution. Okay, another loop we'll be looking at is the while loop, which I've stated earlier. We said we have the for loop and the while loop. So what is the while loop used for? The while loop is used to execute a block of code as long as its condition remains true. We've talked about conditional statements in one of our previous video, and we said for a statement to be executed it has to evaluate to true. Okay, so for this while loop, as long as the condition is true, it will keep on running. So let's look at the syntax for the while loop. Okay, so this is syntax: while your condition, your code should keep on executing. So this is the syntax for the while loop. So while your condition evaluates to true, keep on running the code that I'll be placing here. So that's the while loop. But for the for loop, it iterates over a sequence, which could be a list, a tuple, a dictionary, a string, etc. Okay, so that's the difference between using the for loop and the while loop. So let's take some examples for the while loop. For example, can say we want to count from 1 to 5, right? So let's create a code that counts from 1 to 5. So our count will begin at 1, and we want to say, in as much as our count is less than 5, keep on counting. So this is what we're saying. So while our count, which is this variable which we've evaluated to 1 already, so we're saying in as much as that variable is less than or equals to 5, it should keep on counting. Okay, so we want to print our count. Okay, and the thing with the while loop is that since your while loop will keep on running as long as your condition statement evaluates to true, you will have to add a statement that will have to offset this code from running, because if you don't do that, that means the code is going to run forever, right? And you don't want your code to run forever. You want at a point your code should break out of that run. Okay, so you will need a statement that we have to do that. So that's what we're going to do. So we're saying our count should be equal to count plus 1. So in every time we print out what our count value is going to go ahead and add 1 to our previous count value to be able to update it. Okay, so this line of code now is what is going to offset this block of code at the end. So let's just run this and see what I'm trying to say. So you see we have 1 2 3 4 5, and when it gets to 5 it stops at 5. Why does it do that? Let me explain to you. So at the beginning our count was 1, so it comes here 1. Is 1 less than or equals to 5? It's true, 1 is lesser than 5. So, and we say our while condition is going to execute this block of code in as long as this statement is true. So it's going to print our count value, which is 1. And what's the next we asked it to do? Add 1 to the previous value which you had. So previously our count was 1. 1 plus 1 will give us 2. So our new count value now has been evaluated to 2. We've changed this value now from 1 to 2 here. So it's no longer this 1 that is going to come in now. It's not going to be 2, because this value here, or this variable here, has now been updated to 2. So it's 2 less than or equals to 5. That's true. It's going to go ahead, print out 2, and 1 now will be added to 2, which is our new count value. So that is what it's going to do until it gets to 4, when 1 will be added to 4 and it makes 5. Now it's going to come here. It's 5 less than or equals to 5. 5 is not lesser than 5, but 5 is equals to 5. So it's still going to evaluate to true, right? So it's going to print out our count variable, which is 5, and add 1 to 5. Now the value is now 6, right? Is 6 lesser than 5? No. Is 6 equals to 5? No. So at this point, since these are statements now can no longer evaluate to true, this is at this point our code is now going to break. So imagine we did not add this piece of code. Our code is going to keep on running and it's going to keep on printing out 1, because this line of code wasn't written there. Okay, so next thing we'll be looking at some loop control statements like the break, continue, and pass. Okay, so for the break statement is used to terminate the loop prematurely when a condition is met. If you don't want your code to get to the end, you just need it to meet a specific task, then it can end. Then you use the break statement. It is used to terminate the loop prematurely when a condition is met. So for example, let's say we want to print numbers for num in range 1 16, or let's say 10. Okay, now we're saying if our norm equals to 5, then we want our piece of code to break. So first of all, we said it should go through a range of number that is from 1 to 10. That was the first instruction we stated. Okay, let me just go ahead and add another code say and show you what I'm talking about. So if we go ahead and copy this and paste it in this line of code and say print norm, and let me run this. So you see it gave us from 1 to 9. Okay, because when you are looking at range, the last number is not usually inclusive, so it's from 1 to 9, and it say print norm. So that is the first information, or the first task you gave it to do. But looking at the second task, we are saying if this value evaluates to 5, once you get to 5, stop. Meaning you've given it a task to print from 1 to 9, to go, not technically print from 1 to 9, loop through range of values from 1 to 9, and if you find the value of 5, then you stop and print out that value for me. So that's where you can go ahead and use that break statement. So we're saying if that value evaluates to 5, then break your code, and not just only break your code, print all the other values out for me. Okay, so that means the values that you've gotten up until 5, then go ahead and print those values for me. So if we go ahead and run this, you see we have 1. First of all, it's going to loop through this range of values which I've printed out below. So it's going to go to 1. Is 1 equals to 5? That's not true, so it's not going to break. It's going to print out that value, which is 1. It's going to go to the next value in our range, which is 2. Is 2 equals to 5? That's not true, so this break statement is not going to take place. It's going to go ahead and obey this print norm statement. It's going to print 2 up until it gets to 5. When it gets to 5, is 5 equals to 5? That's true. Then this break statement would be affected because your code has already break. It's not going to be able to get to this step where it says print norm, so it's not going to print your 5. At this point, your code is going to stop running. So that's how to use the break statements. Next, we'll be looking at the continue statement. So for the continue statement, it skips the current iteration and proceed with the next one. Okay, so while for the break statement, when it gets to that particular value, is going to stop running. For the continue statement, is going to skip that particular value and continue running. So let's do this again. So we are using same range of values 1 to 10, and this time around we are using the continue statement, and we are saying for norm in our range of values, so we're still using 1 to 10. Okay, and we're saying if norm equals 5, continue. So we're going to see the difference now. Continue, then print norm. So let's run this. So you can see we got 1 to 9, and note 5 was not inclusive, whereas in the previous one, when it got to 5, what did it do? It stopped, the code stopped running. But when we use the continue statement, when it got to 5, it's going to skip that value of 5 and its code is going to continue running. So that's the difference between using the break and the continue. So for the continue statement, it keeps that current iteration and proceeds with the next one. So that's just the difference between break, continue. So another one we're looking at is the pass statement. For the pass, is used as a placeholder when a statement is required syntactically but no action is to be performed. Okay, for the pass statement, we don't want any action to take place. It's actually very straightforward and simple. So we are just saying for norm in range 1 to 10. since we just wrote a piece of code, but for now we don't want anything to happen, we don't want any action to take place, so we can just fill in pass. Okay, so when it gets here, it's just going to pass, nothing is going to happen, the code is just going to just stay like that, because we've not filled in any block of code we want to execute yet. So that's what the pass can just do. It's not going to run error, but there's nothing that is going to take place. It's just used as a placeholder for your future code. So next we'll be looking at nested loop. A nested loop simply means a loop inside another loop. So let's take an example for I in range 1 to 4, for ox in range 1 to 4. Okay, and let's run this, then I will explain what this code does. Let's say we want to print I equals to I, and let's say our ox is also equals to ox, and close this, right? So let's go ahead and run this code. So this is what we got. Okay, so if you see our output, you see we got I 1, ox 1, I 1 again, ox 2, I 1, ox was 3, then it goes to 2 now, I 2, ox is 1, I also is 2, ox is 2, I is 2, and ox is 3, and so forth. And why does it run like this? Because we have a for loop inside another for loop, and for loop is iterating through a sequence, right? And what we've technically done here, we've added another sequence for it to iterate through also. So it takes the first number in this range, which is number 1, and that's what it does here. I is equals to 1, then it comes to this next line of code, and it goes through this sequence. So the first number also is going to be 1, right? But the thing with this a for loop inside another for loop is that it has to completely run out with this for loop for it to go again and pick the second number from here. So you'll see that what it does, it's going to pick number 1 also and goes through this same piece of code, and it picks out 2, same thing, and it picks out 3 until it has completely iterated through the sequence in this line of code. When it is done with that, then it goes to the second value in this sequence, which is 2. So you could see when it was done, it went to number 2, and same thing, it's also going to go to this for loop, do same thing, and iterate through this sequence. So that's what using a for loop inside another for loop actually does. So it's going to iterate through all the values in the sequence until it is complete with its stacks. Next, we're going to look at how our loops iterate over different data structures, and the first one we look at is list as a data structure. So let's take an example and create a list. Let's say we have this called numbers, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I want to iterate through this list, how do I write my for loop? It is very simple. Just go ahead and say for I in, what's the name of our list? Numbers, right? Numbers. And remember, put in your colon, and you can go ahead and say we want to print our I. And I said earlier that this word I here could be anything, right? It can take in anything. It could be I, it could be num, it could be x, it could be z, anything at all. Okay, so we want to print in I, and we're iterating through this list. So what is it going to do? It's going to go through this list, and it's going to pick out every value in this list one after the other. So let's go ahead and run that, and these all got 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Another thing we're going to do is iterate through a string. And same example, let's say we have a simple string called test, and what do we have within our test? We have hello, right? So simply we can just say for x in test, we want to go ahead and print s. So if we go ahead and run this, what is it going to do? It's going to iterate through this our variable and it's going to print out every letter that makes up this variable one after the other. So we have h, e, l, l, and o. So another thing I'll be showing you is iterating through dictionaries. Okay, so let's say we have a dictionary and let's call this students, and our students dictionary contains definitely the name of our students, and let's say this is John, and let's say age of our student, and let's say our student is 18 years of age, and okay, let's say a course, sorry, and let's say a student, he takes English as his course. Okay, English language. Okay, so now we want to iterate through this dictionary. If you've watched our video on dictionary, you see how I thought I could iterate through dictionaries. You know, dictionaries is made up of key and value pair, right? So to iterate, we have to call the key and the value. And remember, this could be any alphabet or any word you want to use also, just like the way we have I and S also here. So we are just using k to represent our key and v to represent our value, and we are iterating through our dictionary. And remember, our dictionary is an item, right? So remember to put your parentheses at the back of your items and your colon. And what do we want? We want to print our key and values. So let's go ahead and run this code. So you see we have our name to be John, our age to be 18, and course offered to be English language, right? So these are how you can iterate through dictionaries, strings, lists, etc. So even for the various different data types, it also uses same approach. Okay, so next thing I'll be looking at are common pitfalls to avoid when you are, trying to use for loops or use any of the loops in Python, for loops or while loops. With while loops, the most common pitfall that we could avoid is infinite loops. Be very careful to not to create a while loops that keeps on running forever, because it's very easy for you to fall into that trap, because the while loop is always going to run as long as your statement is true. So you have to put in a statement that is going to negate that task you want it to accomplish, because if you don't put in that negating statement, then your code is going to keep on running for eternity, and definitely at some point you want your code to stop running, right? So you have to put in that command that is going to negate your statement. Okay, okay, I just okay, I just want to do something fun and say this will run forever. So in as much your statement here is true, your code will keep on running forever. So you have to put in a statement that is actually going to negate this, so that at some point your code is going to break and stop running. Okay. Another pitfall to avoid when using loop in Python is off by one error. And what do I mean by off by one error? Usually common when using range. Remember that range is off by 1. Okay, so when I say I need values from range 1 to 6, I'm technically saying I need values from 1 to 5. That's what it's going to give to me. Oh, let me say, okay, for I in range 1 to 6, I want to print I. Okay, I want to print I. So you see, it's going to give me values from 1 to 5 only. So if in a situation you actually wanted 6 to be inclusive, then you have to increase this by 1 and it will be 7, and it's going to give you 6 inclusively. So those are two pitfalls we should take into consideration when using loops in Python. Loops are very powerful for handling repetitive tasks and processing large data sets. So you can go ahead and practice using loops with different data types and control statements in order to strengthen your skill. Okay, so with this, I'll be bringing this video to an end. Please, if you find this video educative or informative, please like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. All right, and drop your questions and comments in the comment section below. I'll be going through each comment and try my best to answer each and every one of us. Okay, in our next class or in our next video, I'll be looking at Python functions. So please turn on your notification bell so that once I drop that video, you'll be the first to know. Okay, bye for now.